Hi, it's Shelly Malone, integrative and functional dietitian and author of the book Inflamed. And this is the 5th video in the anti-inflammatory lifestyle video series. And today we're going to talk about stress, exactly what it does to your body, and some specific practices that I use to help manage it day to day. And we've talked a lot about inflammation, chronic inflammation, nutrient deficiencies, gut health, but the truth is, if you don't learn to manage your stress, you will never be able to heal completely. So just like with inflammation, when it comes to stress, it's important to differentiate between acute stress and chronic stress. So in acute stress, maybe you're on a deadline, or you're nervous about a big presentation, or you're legitimately in imminent danger. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It initiates your fight or flight or your get it done response, and that's okay. It actually starts in your brain, specifically your hypothalamus, moves to your pituitary, onto your adrenal glands, which then will release adrenaline and then cortisol. The problem comes when you're in a state of chronic stress. Maybe you are having relationship problems, or you've been a caretaker to someone who's sick, or you're having an enduring financial issue, or your job is just really stressful or toxic. Any of those situations, that moves you into a chronic stress. And when you're having these hormones continually rippling through your body, it can compromise your immune system. It can cause digestive issues, including making your gut more permeable. It causes weight gain because it causes your appetite to increase. It increases fat storage, and it leads to inflammation. So how do we manage stress? I know we all know that we need to do it, but I think we either don't realize the physiological harm it truly does to our bodies, or it's just really easy to get caught up in the day-to-day demands that we don't prioritize it. Or I know in my case, it's just hard to sometimes stop all the doing to really take time to focus on your mental health, which ultimately plays a huge role in your physical health. And I really want you to understand that this isn't going to mean that you're going to have to sit like cross-legged in the corner meditating for 20 minutes twice a day. I mean, if you can do that, that would be great, but I know in my situation, if I were to try to do that, I'd get body slammed by my 4-year-old boy. So what I'm going to share with you are some tips and tricks that I use throughout the day, sometimes multiple times a day. Some of them even just take seconds. And these would be something outside of what I think are pretty familiar. Like, of course, meditation is wonderful, and I definitely encourage it, even if you can only do it for a couple minutes a day. Deep breathing or any type of breathing techniques you use are huge, or yoga, or more of the formal things. I definitely approve it, but I just wanted to share some other things that maybe you haven't thought of and will be helpful. I was first woken up to understand what stress really was when I read Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, which was one of the first books I read after I got my RA diagnosis and was kind of reeling from that, and also struggling with some postpartum depression. I consider this mandatory reading for everyone, but what he does so simply and eloquently is just explain what stress is, and that is that it's just this resistance to not wanting to be where we are right now. It's this desire to be over here, somewhere in the future, but you're right here. So maybe you're working on a project and you really want to be to a place where that project is finished. Or you're having all of these what if thoughts about the future. But the insanity, as he calls it, is that we can't do anything about the future. We only have this present moment. And so to keep focusing on the future or being in this resistance to not being there just doesn't make sense, and it doesn't help us. So the best thing you can do is just fully embrace this present moment where you are, and when you do that, you will find the resources that you need right now that will ultimately help you get to where you want to be. Okay, so this tip, I know I heard it from Chris Crusher somewhere, but I can't remember where, but I remember him talking about just simply relabeling what stress is. So instead of talking and thinking, oh my God, I'm stressed, just relabel it as energy and just acknowledge that you just happen to have energy moving through you right now. And I've used this, especially in public speaking. I found it really helpful into just even the moments right before, just even kind of laugh at it, like, wow, or just be curious about it. I'm having some serious energy moving through me, instead of, labeling it as this something that's very negative. And related to that, it's another gem from Eckhart Tolle, is to just visualize yourself as transparent. So that if you're having some type of stressor, I use this mainly for maybe some not as significant stressors like screaming kids or something. Just visualize yourself transparent and just that stressor just going through your body. So again, you're not having that resistance to and trying to fight it, but just letting it pass. Okay, another person I follow very closely, and I also consider any of her work mandatory reading, is Marianne Williamson. And one of her biggest themes is choosing love over fear. But not in a romantic sense, just thinking of love as maybe the universe or God or whatever you believe in being very supporting of you and wanting you to succeed, versus this more fear-based mentality, that everything's going to go horribly or they are out to get you. I know that's a big one for me. I'm always worried they're going to be mad at me or they're not going to be happy with what I'm doing. I have no idea who they are, but it still haunts me sometimes. So she just continues to reiterate this, choosing fear or love. You really only have two choices. So what I do, and this is something I can do in just seconds if I find kind of like a fearful or stressful thought coming to me, is I literally visualize a street sign and a fork in the road, and one is fear and one is love. And just in a second, I will just visualize myself choosing the love road or the love street or whatever, and I'll just do that over and over. And there's been days where I've probably done that hundreds of times, and it does really help. Okay, so relating to our first practice and just kind of this introduction to being present, when I've been in situations that have been really stressful and traumatic, what I've gone to is being present, but being like insanely present, like very intensely present, to where literally I'm sitting on this couch, I'm feeling the cushions on my couch. Maybe I'm focusing on a bird I can hear chirping in the background, or the hum of the refrigerator, or whatever it is. You just second to second are just so intensely focused on something that you get very present, and that can block out all of the negativity or the stress or the fear that's entering your mind. And I've found when I've done this, I do usually get better ideas of resolutions to the problems I'm faced with, or just a sense of inner peace. Something else that's been really helpful for me, especially when I'm having any type of chronic stressor in my life, is to really think about the feelings that you want to have when this stressor or this circumstance changes. So instead of focusing all of your attention on how you want things to change exactly and how it's going to happen, just think about the feelings that you want to have when the circumstance changes. And you can write that down. You can write out the circumstance if you want, but I think it's really important to include how you're going to feel about that. And then the really key part, so that you're just not kind of trying to practice this law of attraction type thing, is to spend some time feeling it, read it, think about those feelings, and pretend that that's where you're at. And try to do that at least 2 times a day. And I would say for doing something like this, that's kind of a routine type of thing, I would think about the time of day that you can do it most consistently and schedule that in. I know personally, I always think, oh yeah, I'll always do that right before bed, but after dinner and getting kids bathed and to bed, it can sometimes just feel like one more thing on my to-do list. So what I'll do is I'll schedule it in, and usually it's during my weekday, because at that time, taking 10 or 15 minutes doesn't seem like a big deal, whereas at the very end of the day, it can sometimes seem overwhelming. I hope you found at least one of these practices helpful and will start to implement them consistently into your life. and then see some improvements in your mental or physical health. And this is really critical, especially if you're dealing with some type of chronic illness, because the illness itself is a source of stress on your body. So you're even more susceptible to the physiological damage that can happen from an external chronic stressor. And of course, there are many other practices you can use. I talk about some of them in my book, and I'll also list some good resources at the end of this video. And I hope you will check those out and find what works for you. But if you want to stay in touch and get access to more videos and a free download I have on my website with 30+ action steps for an anti-inflammatory diet, you can sign up at shellymalone.com.